listening to the Labor Notes podcast, our weekly show on rank and file news and organizing tactics. I'm Danielle Smith, an organizer at Labor Notes.
And I'm Natasha Elena Ullman, a staff writer at Labor Notes. It's a heavy week. We're finding ourselves once again enmeshed ever more deeply in brutal, indefinite wars that terrorize civilians abroad and direct away the basic resources at home that we need as working people.
It can feel hard in these moments not to give in to anguish and grief, and yes, we should of course feel those things, but I like to hold on just as fiercely to the flip side, which is a sense of hope and belief that focused, disciplined organizing has always been one way through the most dire political moments we've experienced. And it is an antidote to the despair and sense of chaos that the ruling class tries to use to distract, deflate, and disorganize us.
And that's not just what we're telling each other on the pod to feel better, even if it sometimes kind of feels that way these days. But even in just the past month, workers have accomplished real, tangible wins that are worth recognizing and building on right now.
Yeah, we've been covering some of those stories at labornotes.org. We've reported on how Volkswagen workers in Chattanooga, Tennessee recently won their first contract. Our coworker Luis Feliz Leon has been covering that story for a while now. And you might remember that this group of more than 3,000 workers made history almost 2 years ago when they became the first auto plant in the South since the 1940s to vote to unionize.
February is also the month where nearly 15,000 New York City nurses won their contracts and concluded their indefinite strikes. Another historic flexing of labor muscle, considering that nurses often tend to do shorter episodic walkouts, sort of like the periodic 3-day walkouts that nurses at the University Medical Center in New Orleans have done as they fought for their first contract. Our coworker Jenny reported on the NYSNA strike in New York City this year. That's the New York State Nurses Association.
Yeah, Natasha has been reporting on the latest in the saga of Mexico City's trolleybus workers, who, as of this recording on March 3rd, were getting ready to strike as they fight for, quote, raises, job security, and more hires and training to expand Mexico City's electric transport infrastructure, end quote, as Natasha reported.
We'll link all 3 stories in the episode description. But here's what you should know about each of these stories. Shall we do these rapid fire style?
Let's go. 3 things you should know about each of these stories. Volkswagen, Natasha, you're up.
Okay, 3 things. First, what they won. According to the UAW, quote, the deal locks in 20% wage increases, healthcare cost reductions, job security guarantees, an enforceable grievance procedure, and much more, end quote. Our coworker Luis reported some of the details. He wrote that, quote, new hires will begin at $23.40 per hour. Progression to the top rate for production and skilled trades will take 48 months. Skilled trades will top out at $49.86. The deal improves healthcare and includes bonuses of $6,550 per worker upon ratification, plus annual bonuses of $2,550 for the life of the agreement. Profit sharing will be doled out on a sales percentage. For example, a payout of $1,500 for over 8% in sales. Workers maintain their attendance bonus of 8% annually. Strong job security language includes a standard successor and assigns clause, ensuring that the collective bargaining agreement would transfer over to any new buyer. Workers also won more time off, including 2 floating holidays, totaling 16 paid holidays, and the right to strike over health and safety grievances, end quote. Second thing you should know, Luis also wrote about how the workers won what they did by holding firm against what they saw as the boss's efforts to dampen their momentum with enticements. For instance, management offered a nice ratification bonus if the workers settled their contract by October 31st in 2025. And that was kind of similar to what management did when the big 3 automakers settled their contracts in 2023, where Volkswagen gave workers an 11% raise that November. But the workers still organized to form a union then, and got strike ready this time around, and it helped them stand their ground and win what they needed. Third thing you should know about this fight is this quote by Yolanda Peoples, a Volkswagen worker in Chattanooga who is on the bargaining committee. She said, quote, I hope that the other plants here in the South are watching. We just achieved something that everyone thought we were not able to do. We now have our seat at the table, and it's going to be life-changing for a lot of people in our plant, end quote. All right, Danielle, NYSNA strike, your turn.
You packed so many things into those 3 things. Slick.
Got me.
All right, in that spirit, first thing, the 15,000 nurses who walked out were fighting on critical issues, wages and job security, but also pretty severe concerns around understaffing and workplace violence, especially in the emergency department waiting rooms, where patients have to deal with several hours long wait times. They were also fighting on language around how AI will be used to make sure it doesn't replace the judgment and expertise of experienced medical workers. And they did get some wins. Our coworker Jenny Brown reported that, quote, at Mount Sinai, nurses gained raises of 4% a year over their 3-year contract. At Montefiore, there will be a base wage increase of $15,000 over the life of the contract, and healthcare will continue without premiums, end quote. They also won language around staffing ratios, workplace violence, and AI. Second thing, strikers ran energetic picket lines for weeks, building several campaigns, including rank and file led actions targeting New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who kept renewing an executive order that let hospitals hire travel nurses from out of state. These nurses would typically have needed a New York State license to practice here, and this executive order basically made it easier for the hospitals to hire these scab nurses. Strikers were able to generate headlines and bring the public into their fight through these marches and demonstrations to make the case that political powers in the state had taken a side in their fight and hurt workers to do it. Third, 4,200 nurses at New York Presbyterian hospitals had held out after more than 10,000 nurses from Mount Sinai and Montefiore Medical Center facilities reached their own tentative agreements. The nurses at New York Presbyterian mobilized very quickly to run a Vote No campaign, according to Sophie Boland, a bargaining committee member whose voice you've heard before on the pod when we did an episode back in January on the niceness strike. Sophie and another New York Presbyterian nurse, Tanya Fisher, recently told pod producer Sindhu Sundar that they were holding out for better language and enforcement around proper staffing and for meaningful job protections. All right, Natasha, close us out with 3 highlights from the story you've been reporting on Mexico City's trolleybus workers.
All right, here goes. 1, they're fighting for something that will be very familiar to public workers in big cities. Pay is a big one. Rents have soared in Mexico City, so some members of the Tram Workers Alliance of Mexico, or Alianza de Tranviarios de Mexico, or ATM, say they have to live so far outside the city that depends on them that some of them have to commute like 3 hours each way. That means to show up at work at 7 or 8 in the morning, some of them are waking up at around 3 or 4 a.m. Another big thing is that their union says that the Servicio de Transportes Eléctricos, STE, a publicly owned transport authority, hasn't really kept up its obligations under the 3-year agreement that workers won in March 2025 to provide proper uniforms and safety equipment. 2, these transit workers have been building for maximum leverage as they're getting strike ready at a time when the city is preparing for an influx of travelers during the 2026 World Cup, where some games are taking place in Mexico City. That makes the threat of a strike pretty harrowing. A strike would paralyze the city, just as 5.5 million tourists are expected to descend upon it. And the last thing anyone wants is labor strife on the world stage. Number 3, on a union culture note, here's what Emanuel Tolentino Ortiz, a trolleybus operator for nearly 15 years, had to say. Quote, since I can remember, I've celebrated Children's Day with the union. They'd take us to Lucha Libre, it's a holiday on ice. End quote. As I wrote in the piece, these festivities, alongside religious observances, an annual dance held on Tram Workers Day, and a baseball league where Ortiz now plays against unionized subway and electrical workers, are key to making the union a vital force in members' lives. I think it's really powerful that they've built a union culture that isn't just relevant to members, but is integrated into the very fabric of their lives by offering people so many ways to participate and bring their whole selves and families. And from what I've heard, it seems like they throw a great party too.
Hope I get an invite. Thank you, Natasha. That's our episode. Please rate us or leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. If you're listening to us on Podbean at labornotespodcast.podbean.com, download our episode.
This is where we usually talk about upcoming events, and we will, but we should probably acknowledge one of our bigger upcoming events. We had absolutely wild demand this year for the 2026 Labor Notes Conference and did not anticipate that we'd sell out of our general registration tickets so soon. We are floored by the excitement around the conference, and our staff is hard at work with rank-and-file members, thinking through timely and energizing workshops and panels around everything from basic nuts and bolts organizing skills to big-picture strategizing, identifying important campaigns worth highlighting, and thinking of ways to build opportunities for workers to strengthen connections within their unions, in their caucuses, and with others across sectors doing the same kind of organizing. We'll be talking more on the pod in the coming weeks about the conference and our program, so stay tuned. If you've registered and are coming to the 2026 Labor Notes Conference, we want to hear from you. What are you excited about? What are you and your coworkers organizing for this year? What are you hoping to take away from meeting with thousands of other workers in June? Email us or send us a voice note to podcast@labornotes.org, and we might feature it on an upcoming episode.
And if you haven't registered but would still like a shot at it, you can do either one of two things. If you're looking for an individual registration for yourself, please add your name to the waitlist. You can find it on labornotes.swoogo.com/2026. That's labornotes.swoogo.com/2026. But the waitlist form is only for individuals. If you want to bring a group of any size that you have not yet registered, please email registration@labornotes.org with details, including the number of people in your group, and we will review your request. In the meantime, if you're on the wait list for one of our online events, I think you might be kind of confused because we've got plenty of space in our upcoming Mark Stewart's workshop on investigating grievances on Monday, March 16th, and in our next session of What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart on Tuesday, March 17th, on the topic of open bargaining. We also have our next contract campaign workshop series on 2 Tuesdays in April, April 14th and April 21st. Sign up today for all of those online events at labornotes.org/events.
All right, back to planning the conference. The Labor Notes podcast is produced by Daniel Smith, Sindhu Sundar, and myself. Our title music was written and performed by our coworker, Keith Brower Brown. See you next week. Solidarity, y'all.